Hey everybody, Ranger Shannon here with the City of Everett. Welcome to our first in a series of videos where we'll be taking a look at the ecosystem within the City of Everett itself. Today we're going to dig into one of my personal favorite things, and that's owl pellets. The reason we like to look at owl pellets is because they can kind of show us the health and diversity of the ecosystems in which the owls live. So first, to give a little context on owls themselves, we refer to owls as raptors. That's also known as birds of prey. Birds of prey and raptors are primarily a species that feed on animals large relative to their own size. So we define raptors by three primary characteristics. They have sharp talons, which they'll use for grasping, catching, and tearing up the food that they're eating. They also have a sharp hooked beak, which they also use to tear up the food they're eating and consume it. And they have really good eyesight. So this is really important because raptors often travel at very fast speeds and from very far away, so they can see their prey from a far distance and keep track of it as they're traveling really fast. The reason we like to look at raptors for to determine health of the ecosystems is because they're apex predators. So they often function as an indicator species for the ecosystems in which they live. Basically what this means is if you think of a pyramid, you'll have the raptors at the very top of the pyramid. So below them, you'll have your secondary and primary consumers, and below them, your secondary and primary producers. So each level feeds into the next. So if you have a really healthy raptor, that's often a good indicator that the ecosystem as a whole is very healthy. Within the city of Everett itself, we have several different types of raptors. If you go over to, say, Jetty Island, you might run into some osprey. Those are a type of raptor that primarily feed on fish. Around the rest of the city, you'll run into things like eagles, hawks, and owls. And there's a lot of different variety within the species themselves. You might run into a barn owl or a barred owl. So I'm sure a lot of people at this point are wondering, what exactly is an owl pellet? So to fully understand what an owl pellet is, first you have to understand how birds eat. So birds, unlike humans, have two stomachs. So the first stomach functions very much like our own and digests food chemically. So it's very acidic, and it uses that acid to turn the food into energy. Their second stomach, which we call a gizzard, functions a little differently. So birds have something called grit, which are small stones and other coarse materials within their stomach, and they use these, much like we use our teeth, to grind and tear at the food so they can digest it. The second function of the gizzard is it acts as a filter. So essentially what this does is it'll form all the undigestible materials that the bird has eaten into a small spherical ball. So things you'll find in this are fur, teeth, feathers, bones, and any other materials that the bird hasn't been able to fully consume. Every 20 hours for a barn owl, for instance, it will regurgitate one of these pellets. And within that, you'll see about a day's worth of food that the bird's eaten. So you can look at a pretty good diet of the previous day from the bird. So the reason we like to look at an owl's pellet as compared to other birds of prey, like an eagle or a hawk, is because eagles and hawks tend to eat their prey a little bit differently than owls. Eagles and hawks will rip and tear at their prey as compared to an owl who will swallow it whole. So if you look at an owl's pellet, you'll see a lot fuller skeletons and easier to identify parts of the species compared to an eagle's or hawk's, where you might only find a bone or two, and it's a lot harder to see exactly what they've been eating. So without any more explanation, let's go dig into some owl pellets. Hey everybody, so this is the owl pellet we're going to be dissecting today. These owl pellets come from actually right here in Snohomish County, and they are from barred owls. So we have a couple tools we're going to use to dissect. We have a knife here, we have some tweezers to pull out the bones, and then we have an identification chart. And if you look at this chart, it'll kind of show the most common prey that we'll find in these pellets that owls eat. So you have rodents, shrews, moles, and small birds. So let's crack into this, see what we can find. So as you can see, it's a small spherical shape, just like how we were talking about. If you look right here, this is a Rhodic Skull. You can kind of see the teeth here. If you bring it over the chart, it matches right here on the rodents as well. So we'll just put that right there with the rodent skull. So it's likely we'll find some other pieces from a rodent in here. Yep, so right here is a jawbone from a rodent. See right there, it matches up just like the jawbone in the picture. There's another jawbone. You see the prolonged tooth there. So as you can imagine, rodents are probably pretty common in the area, so it is a large part of their diet. There's the pelvic bone from a rodent right there. So like we were talking about earlier, because of how owls eat their prey, you can often find full bones like this that make it pretty easy to identify exactly what the owls have been eating. See, there's another pelvic bone, another jawbone. See if we can find anything in here not a rodent. You can see kind of the fur. There's a lot of fur in here from the rodent that's kind of built up too, because that's undigestible material as well. So it's not just the bones, but the bone is kind of wrapped in the fur. There's another rodent skull right there. So a couple rodents got eaten here. If you do this at home, make sure you're wearing gloves, because you never know what other things might be in here. There looks like a forelimb bone. Kind of see it right there. There's the hind limb right there. So you have most the entire body of the rodent itself kind of broken up in there that's been digested, so the bones are kind of getting spit out. You can do this at home. You can get some owl pellets and dissect them, get a little chart there, and do it on your own if you ever feel like you want to do that. But it's a really fun activity just to kind of see what the owls in your environment have been eating. So thanks again for joining us, and hopefully we can do some more of these in the future.